Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be talking about my playthrough of both Ridge Racer 1 and Ridge Racer 2 on the PSP. This is a game I played a lot when I was younger on the actual PSP console, so I have a bit of nostalgia for it. So right off the bat, probably the thing I like the most about Ridge Racer. Now, I will say that this is the only Ridge Racer I have played, so I'm kind of a casual, when it comes to Ridge Racer in general. But to me, the drifting is just the most satisfying and fun aspect of the game. I think that if I didn't like the driving as much, playing through, you know, this entire game would have been a lot more difficult. But overall, I do like the game, but I do have some complaints. Right off the bat, my first issue with the game is the fact that, the game might technically have a lot of vehicles, but realistically, it only really has three vehicles. So what do I mean by that is there are three different drift types. There's basically like a standard, low drift, and high drift, and there are six classes of cars. And within each class, I believe there are nine vehicles. And essentially, the more you play through the campaign, the more you'll start unlocking vehicles for any given class. The issue is that, let's say for example, I'm talking about class one, the high drift type car. When you unlock the second version of it, the tier one second version of it, as far as I know, it's strictly an improvement. Like it's just a slightly better version of the previous one, right? Since there's nine slots and three drift types, basically for each class there are three vehicles. And there's the standard, the one that you start out with. There's sort of like the middle one, and then the one you unlock later. And I find that, once you have the latest version, there's really no point in ever picking the previous one. Now, I could be wrong. There might be some subtleties that I just couldn't pick up on, but excluding special vehicles, there's pretty much only three cars in the game. I think that is a testament to how much I actually like the driving, that with such a limited selection of vehicles that I still, really like the game. But unfortunately, I do wish that there were more vehicles that felt different to drive. I think that the special cars, which you unfortunately rarely get to use because there's just not a lot of tours for them, actually do feel unique in a sense, sort of. I'll get into that later. I'm just going to talk about the single player campaign mode, which are essentially the tours. They're essentially just cups, a series of races that you complete. And there are four difficulties: standard, pro, EX, and max. Now, I don't consider myself to be particularly great at this game, but one issue that I encountered is that pretty much almost everything except max tours, which are the final ones that you do, just felt very, very easy. As in, like, I was clearing pretty much every race on my first attempt. There are some, very few races in EX and standard that it took one extra attempt to do, but generally, I feel like, for how many tours there are, I feel like the game is just a little bit too easy. I really just don't think I'm that great at this game. Like, looking back at my gameplay, like there are many times where I slam into the wall, and I make plenty of mistakes. Like I am not some kind of rich racer master by any means. Um, and when you have that many standard, pro, and EX tours, like I appreciate the content. It's nice to have, but it gets very monotonous. It gets very, very tedious when you're essentially playing time attack. Another issue that I have is excluding the max tours. The game, the way the races are structured is it's not like your typical racing game. So, excluding max stores, once again, there are, I believe, about 12 vehicles. I could be wrong, but I think it's about 12. And the way the races are structured is that the number one car starts way ahead of you, and it's almost like you have to make up ground to catch up to them. Like if you look at the mini map for any of these given non-max tour races, the game is essentially like my brain just thinks of it as like a level based racing game. I know that sounds weird, but like that's how I think of it in my head. You know, I don't think that I'm almost positive. I could be wrong that the game cannot handle more than like three other cars at a given time. So basically, going from 12th place all the way to first is almost like multiple levels. You know, when you start at 12th place, each passing each car is kind of like its own sort of little challenge, I guess. Which leads into my other part is that for most of the tours in this game, it really doesn't even feel like you're racing that much. Like the art of this game, more than anything, is being able to maneuver your way around the enemy vehicles. Since the number one racer starts so far ahead of you, obviously the enemy cars have to be way slower than you. So, the biggest challenge in these races is you slamming into the back of a car that's in front of you. I will say there's a level of finesse in being able to take turns at different, orientations, I guess, to not slam into the enemy car. But when you compare this to a more traditional racing game, I know I'm probably always going to compare games to F-Zero GX just because it's my favorite racing game. These don't really feel like traditional races until the max tours. Like anything before the max tours, like I said, it's kind of like an obstacle course almost. Like all the enemy cars are very slow compared to you, and it's just like you're essentially trying to avoid slamming into them. And when you do slam into them, you basically lose all sense of speed. I'm not really a huge fan of this sort of type of races, I guess. They can feel quite dull. Like I said, what kind of kept me going in playing this game is just how fun it is just to drive. Um, but I would have honestly preferred the game more if they just kept it to three AI racers and you, the player. Like if the game can't handle more than four cars, I just think having quote unquote 12 vehicles in each given race is just like it just feels very strange. Like that's why I called it almost like a level based racing game. I want to talk a little bit about the differences between the first and the second game on the PSP. Now, I could just be an idiot, but I honestly thought they were two separate games. But Ridge Racer 2 is actually more of an enhancement of the first game. The best way I can describe it is like original Mario Kart 8 to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. So there's really not much of a reason to play the first game, except for one thing, which I'll mention later. So if I had to recommend the PSP version of Ridge Racer, I would recommend to play the second game, which is weird. I mean, generally when I play any game, I always try to start at the first game. That's what I played. I played Ridge Racer 1 only to shortly after starting Ridge Racer 2 realize that I'm playing the exact same game all over again. But it is what it is. Um, Ridge Racer 2 does have a few extra tours, and obviously extra tracks. That's why it's just like an enhanced version of the first game. Another difference is the special vehicles. Now, and I might be mispronouncing these, so I apologize, but while the Angelus and the Crenale and Pac-Man are in both games, they look different from the first to the second game. Now, whether they drive different, I'm not good enough to tell those subtleties, but I did want to mention that they look different. Now, Ridge Racer 1 actually lets you use the Rally X car, which is not in Ridge Racer 2 at all, which is a shame because, in my opinion, this is probably like the most unique vehicle in the game. It has really low acceleration. It builds boost slower than the other vehicles, but its boosts last the longest. And then talking about the Angelus, Crenale, and Pac-Man, they're basically like You know, Angelus is the standard drift, Cronulla is the high drift vehicle, and Pac-Man is the low drift. But I did want to mention that Pac-Man is also kind of unique because Pac-Man builds like he builds boost faster than the other vehicles. At least that's what it felt like. But he feels a little bit slower. And then honestly, Angelus and Cronulla are just really fast versions, in my opinion, of the standard drift and the high drift type. Ridge Racer 1 handles its difficulty in a pretty terrible way. So it's just another reason to play Ridge Racer 2, in my opinion. So the max tours in Ridge Racer 1 are absolutely ridiculous. Like the rubber banding that the AI does is out of this world, and it's kind of hilarious. I'll show it on the screen while I'm, when I edit the video. When the AI is rubber banding to you in Ridge Racer 1, it's almost like spazzing out. Like you see, like the enemy car starts to like vibrate. And it looks absolutely ridiculous. The unfortunate reality for Ridge Racer 1's max tours is that because the rubber banding is so insane, it's almost impossible to front run, at least in my opinion. The strategy essentially devolves into having 3 boosts for the very last stretch of the final lap and just hoping for the best. This seems to be very common in racing games in general. It was common in Snowboard Kids. It's present in MotorStorm. It's present in this game. It is unfortunate. I do think that it's quite common for the AI in racing games to cheat in some kind of way when it comes to the highest difficulties. But this is why I just will always sing praises to F-Zero GX, because while F-Zero GX AI cheats in their own way, as in like they can drive with a level of precision that no human can drive in, they still, as far as I know, operate under the same rules that you do, the player. So, comparing it to F-Zero GX, once again, like if you are good enough at driving in GX, even in Master Mode, you can front run and you can build the lead. But in Ridge Racer 1, it just doesn't really seem possible. Like the AI seems to tether to you. They also seem to have near infinite boost. So, it's unfortunately like laps 1 and 2 just don't really matter too much. Just make sure to have enough boost available. And honestly, like a huge chunk of lap 3 doesn't really matter that much either. It's really like the last quarter of the final lap. The main thing is just to try not to, get too far behind and just floor it on the last, section of the final lap. These max tours were like absolutely nightmarish. Like some of them just took many attempts. I believe it's called NE plus Ultra. The special vehicle max tour was especially brutal. It was 6 tracks. I think it took like over an hour. I got stuck on multiple tracks. I'm actually my playthrough has all of my attempts in it, so it's cool to see like how many attempts it took me to clear each level. And yeah, it's just more frustrating than anything. I would say that the only reason to really play Ridge Racer 1 on the PSP is for bragging rights, to say that you cleared the max tours in that game, which are just hellishly annoying. But other than that, that's pretty much the only reason I can think of to play the first game. That's why once again, if I would recommend this to someone, I would say play Ridge Racer 2. If you really want those bragging rights, or you really love the game that much, get a save file, 100% save file on the internet for Ridge Racer 1, and just do the max tours. So because I played Ridge Racer 1 in my playthrough, and one of my complaints of the game is just how boring and tedious and monotonous the easier races can be. When I tackled Ridge Racer 2, I basically got a 100% save file from the internet and just did the max tours. So I actually redid Opus 1 through 6, which are, the max tour for each given class, class 1, class 2, class 3, etc. And then I did an additional sort of self-imposed challenge, I guess, which is to clear the special vehicle cups with all special vehicles. So there's 2 classes of special vehicles in Ridge Racer 2. So I did each special vehicle tour 4 times. Um, the balance seems pretty out of whack. Like some cars were just like extremely easy, like cleared every race first try or almost first try, and then two specific vehicles were just absolute hell on earth. Um, since I did all this extra stuff, I figured I might as well talk about each special car in Ridge Racer 2, just for fun. I'm obviously not an expert at this game. I don't speedrun or do time attack, so this is just my opinion. Right. I'll sort of make like a little bit of a tier list, a little bit of a ranking of my experience with the special vehicles in the second game. I'll quickly talk about the music. This game has some really, really great songs. Now, admittedly, I think that there are more songs I don't like than songs that I do like, but the songs that I do like, I think are amazing. Disco Ball is like I listen to this outside of the game, you know. And I think there's about two other songs that I liked. Um, but a lot of the others were just kind of I was just kind of indifferent towards them. But there's a reason why a lot of people really like the soundtrack in this game, and since music is so subjective, I mean, but for me, yeah, even though there were more songs that I was kind of whatever about than the songs I really liked, those ones that I really liked, I think are like masterpiece levels of quality. Another cool thing about this game in general is the fact that the tracks are driven both ways, so it actually greatly impacts like how the track feels. So even though the track count is not crazy, the fact that they are driven in reverse just adds to you know the learning that you'll need to really feel like fully comfortable in these levels. Which I guess it makes sense when you think about it this way. All those early tours, standard pro and EX tours are really there to train you so you stand a chance in the max tours. But that still doesn't make them any less tedious. I mean, they're still pretty tedious, but I guess they still serve a purpose, which is, you know, to really like ingrain these tracks into your brain. So I'll start with the special one cars. The first one that I used was the Hijack, which is this like big truck-looking car. It's like this racing truck, and yeah, this one was rough. This one was very difficult. The best way I can describe the Hijack is like a high drift vehicle on crack. Like it was so hard to control this thing, and like I used the high drift vehicles for my playthrough. Like that is my preferred vehicle, right? Because I like the drifting. I love the drifting in Ridge Racer. So, but this one would just like constantly spin out of control. Like it was just ridiculous. Like, and I got stuck on a bunch of tracks. Like I'm looking at my numbers here, and I got stuck like over 5 times on 3 tracks. Um, it was nuts. I was getting honestly very frustrated. Um, and I questioned whether I should even like keep doing this sort of little challenge if they were all going to be this hard. But I'm not really sure if the hijack just sucks. But even if it's like really good, like I feel like the player has to be on point to be able to control this properly. Like I said, you'll initiate a drift, and next thing you know, your car's like facing the wall, and by the time you self-correct, you've lost like all sense of speed. I will say, I actually really like the car in a sense that, like, I like the car, but I think it sucks basically. My favorite part about this is the engine sound that it makes, especially when the when the AI is behind you. Like it sounds like you got like a demon behind you, like a big monster. I love the engine sound of the hijack, but I personally would not recommend it if your goal is just to simply clear all the tours. I think all three other special one vehicles are just like light years better. And if the hijack can even compete, like you have to be like 2 times the player to like properly utilize it. Next, I'll talk about the Dragon Saber Wild Gang. I think this car is insane. Personally, I think it's the best special one vehicle. Like, once again, if your goal is just to finish the special one max tour, this is what I would recommend. Um, it's just I don't even really know how to describe it. Like the drift type seems like stand like not low drift type. It definitely it doesn't feel like Pac-Man, but I'm gonna compare it closest to just a standard drift type. I think it's just like really fast, and one of the things is that it's small. And this is something I should have mentioned when talking about the hijack. Like one of the reasons why I think the hijack just kind of sucks, it's because it's ginormous. And kind of like I mentioned earlier in the video, part of the art of this game is to being able to like maneuver around the vehicles in front of you. So when your car is freaking ginormous, you're gonna just be slamming into the back of the AI and then losing all sense of speed. I also feel like, and again, it's kind of anecdotal. Like I'm looking at the car select screen, and it doesn't really have a lot of stats or anything, but at least just based on my experience, it felt like it has quite high acceleration. Like you're able to gain your speed back quite often. And looking at my numbers here, I literally did the max tour first try for all races. Like all 6 races, I got a first place finish, first try. So to me, it's just like it's not even a contest. Like this is the best special one car in the game. If you want to make this the easiest, like the least painful as possible, like pick this one. I'm gonna talk about the last 2 special 1 cars, kind of in the same sort of section, which is the Angelus or Angelus and the Crenale, the Crenal. Um, they both felt very, very similar. Uh, I, I didn't clear every race on my first attempt, but the most I ever really got stuck in was like 2 attempts, and I think it was only 1 race. I think the Angelus is more towards the standard drift type, whereas the Crenale is more like it drifts a little bit more. But other than that, the cars felt very similar. I think either or is a great option just for completing, uh, the special one max tour. Uh, and that's pretty much all 4 cars. Like honestly, I think the Dragon Saver is like S tier, and I will put like Angelus and Crenale as A tier, and like I'll put like the hijack in like C tier or something. I think the hijack is like by a large margin the worst or the most difficult vehicle to clear the cup in. Overall, the max tours in Ridge Racer 2 are just way easier than the first game. I did the max tour in Ridge Racer 1 with the Rally X, and like I said, it took me like over an hour. Um, and with the exception of the hijack, the special 1 max tour went pretty smooth. Uh, it was all relatively easy. Now I'm gonna talk about the other set of special vehicles. Um, I believe the tour is called Deus, uh, and I'm basically gonna. It's kind of like the special one, where 3 out of the 4 vehicles were relatively easy, and one of them was just absolute hell. So I'll start with the kid vehicles. There's the Angelus Kid and the Crenale Kid, which are these like tiny cars. Like I said earlier, I think being small is a positive in this game. You have like a smaller like sort of hurt box, so you can pass the other cars easier. Both of the kid cars, I think, if you don't get the boost start very slow. But like once they pick up speed, I think they're absolutely insane. Like S tier, like overpowered in my opinion. I really couldn't tell much of the difference, but looking at my data here on my playthrough, I cleared the Special 2 Max Tour first try with the Angelus Kid, but I incurred 3 restarts with the Crenale Kid. So it might just be like maybe I wasn't paying attention. Honestly, they felt extremely similar. I'm sure there's a difference, but I just wasn't able to tell too much. I think whether you go the Angelus or the Crenale Kid, it's probably going to be your best option to clear this tour with the least amount of pain. Last, I'll talk about the Yamasa Raggio. I think that I also cleared this with, relatively little effort. Um, I was originally going to put both of the kit vehicles in S tier and maybe like the Yamasa in A tier. but I actually incurred more restarts with the Carnale kid than the Raggio. So I think all three of these are honestly all really good. The Raggio controls most similar to just like a regular car, which is what you've been using the whole game. So you can't really go wrong with any of these three. But here's where the problem lies. Pac-Man. Uh, I would say unless you are doing some kind of challenge run, I would strongly recommend to not touch Pac-Man in the Max Tours. This was, I think this was probably the most painful thing in the entire playthrough for me. Just the first track of this Max Tour incurred over 20 tries. Like my split has it where I was stuck on just this one track, 1 out of 6 tracks, for over an hour, like an hour and 20 minutes. It's just absolute hell. Um, I know the game shows that all the cars have the same top speed, but I swear that Pac-Man is freaking slower. I think, like, just without boosting, he definitely feels slower than all the other cars, and to compensate for that, he builds boost very fast, and he also has a low drift type. But like, it's just I don't know, man. Like, I just struggled really hard in certain tracks. There were two tracks in specifically that I just like. I was losing it. Like, I almost gave up. This was the second time in this whole sort of playthrough where I kind of like questioned my ability to even complete this. Um, Thankfully, I stuck through it, but the track number one and then track number five, just like absolute hell. And it felt like I almost like, especially in track five, I felt like the only possible way to win is to like have the AI slam behind me and give me that boost, because towards the end of the track they would just get so much speed, and it felt impossible to like even keep up with them. And I think that's how I ended up winning track five, by the way, which is just getting to first towards the end of the track and then having the AI slam behind me and give me a little boost while also slowing them down. So it's like, it's not much of a tier list. I would say that the kid vehicles, the Raggio, are easily like S tier or A tier, and then Pac-Man is like freaking F tier. Maybe he's good in time attack. I'm not sure, but I can certainly say that when it comes to just doing the max tour, like, don't pick this. Don't do it. It was absolute hell. I really think that he's just complete garbage. So yeah, don't pick freaking Pac-Man. I just wanted to have a little section where I kind of talk about the max tours compared from Ridge Racer 1 and Ridge Racer 2. Again, I did both of them. Like the psychopath that I am, I did them twice. Ridge Racer 2 is just a far more balanced experience. Obviously, the AI doesn't rubber band to you. I'm sure there's some level of rubber banding, but it's not like that obvious. It felt like, at least in Ridge Racer 2, you had like a small chance to build the lead, whereas in Ridge Racer 1, it was just totally impossible. These are like super hard. I mean, I know I say like they're like really hard, but looking at my number of attempts, some of them really didn't take me that many attempts. Like, before I edited the videos together and I actually counted my attempts, I really thought that these were like hellish levels of difficulty, but there were some that I cleared like on my first try. Now, don't get me wrong, I think that you have to be at least somewhat competent at the game. Like, I'm not saying I'm a Ridge Racer Pro or anything like that, but you have to at least be somewhat decent and not like slam into the wall and stuff. Um, but overall, I think these are pretty difficult. I did like the challenge. Like I said before, I wish honestly all the cups just had 4 cars, um, instead of like the 12 or anything below max tours. I think that the only time in this game where I felt like I was actually in a race was in the max tours. Where there are only 4 vehicles on each track. Overall, I quite like this game. I think that I do have some issues with it. Like I said, I think that anything before the max tours can get very boring and tedious. There's just so many. Like, there's like over 30 tours to do, and again, most of them you're basically playing time attack. Just the way the races are structured, like the AI has to be slower than you in order for you to catch up to the guy that's in first place. And then, the low number of vehicles I think is kind of a shame. I don't know how other Ridge Racer games work. I would like to play them in the future, but again, there's pretty much only 3 cars in this game. In terms of like how they handle. Sure, some of them, from class 1 to class 6, obviously there's going to be a speed difference. But in terms of how they maneuver, again, you pretty much only have 3 options. In the early tours, like the standard and the pro tour, where I was just, the game was like painfully easy, I would kind of switch around. But towards the end, I kind of just only use the high drift type vehicles. So yeah, you're pretty much driving on only one car. Like they might look different, and they might, be a different color or whatever. But other than some slight adjustments, the top speed and maybe the boost that you start with, they're pretty much the same. So, but just to circle back on the things that I do like about the game, I think the driving is awesome. Like just driving in Ridge Racer is super satisfying. That it's so satisfying that I put up with all the boredom of the earlier tours, and I did the Opus Max tours twice. So, you know, I don't think the game is bad. I think it's fun to play, but it does have some issues. Um, Now, obviously, like the rating that I give at the end is just my opinion. Um, Given that I did all this extra stuff that I didn't really have to do, and I still kind of like the game. It's not like after I finished, I'm like, oh, I hate this game. I never want to play it again. I'm gonna give the game probably about a 7 out of 10. But again, I do realize that I'm kind of biased. Um, I think the driving is just so good that it kind of overshadows the gripes that I had with the number of vehicles and just sort of the tedium of the early tours. I do look forward to playing another Ridge Racer in the future. I have a PS3, custom firmware PS3 that I'll eventually get. I think it's Ridge Racer 7 on there, and I like to try some of the other ones. But yeah, overall, I recommend the game. I think it's a lot of fun. I like arcade racers in general, so and obviously I have nostalgia for this. I played this a lot as a kid, and yeah, it's quite good. If there's anything to take away from this video, if anyone happens to watch this, is to uh, start with Ridge Racer 2. If you want the bragging rights or the clout after you finish Ridge Racer 2, get Ridge Racer 1, and just do the max tours. Skip everything before that. There's really not much, that is in Ridge Racer 1 that's not going to be in Ridge Racer 2. There actually isn't any. I'm not even saying there isn't much. There isn't anything, actually. I'm pretty sure every single tour in Ridge Racer 1 is on the second game. So the only is the special vehicles look different, and the Rally X special vehicle, which is a shame. I think, if anything, maybe do the Max Tour with the Rally X, which is what I did on Ridge Racer 1, and try out that vehicle. But yeah, that's pretty much it.